Hello, and thank you for joining us for this presentation. My name is Christina Clark, and I am the Operations Branch Chief for the Low Income Household Water Assistance Program, otherwise known as LIHWAP. I am joined today by my colleague Mary Watts, the LIHWAP Policy Branch Chief, and the LIHWAP Program Specialist Team. You will be hearing from Mary and members of the Program Specialist Team here today as we go over information to prepare you for LIHWAP data collection and reporting. I will introduce the Program Specialist Team in just a moment, but first, I want to congratulate you on all the work that you've done thus far. Many of you have begun accepting applications, while others are very near to this important benchmark. This means that we've taken this brand new program from authorization to implementation in under a year. Before we get started, I also want to take time to emphasize the importance of data collection for the LIHWAP effort. LIHWAP is currently authorized as an emergency program in response to the COVID pandemic. We know that the need for LIHWAP benefits is great, and it is our responsibility to collect information that demonstrates how important these benefits are. We must be able to provide the details and data to show how many people applied and how many people were served by LIHWAP. We also have to be able to identify which type of benefit payment assistance was most needed. Was it rate reduction or payment for arrearages? We have to collect demographic data to emphasize needs for specific communities and to help us address inequities related to access and affordability for water services. We have from now until September 23rd to obligate LIHWAP funds. To support LIHWAP storytelling in real time, we cannot wait until the end of the first year to have the data that supports this program. We want to be able to show LIHWAP's impacts now in response to this emergency need. And we want to be able to highlight LIHWAP's accomplishments while they're being made, to show how many households have been able to maintain healthy and clean living conditions because they got help that they needed to keep water running in their homes. For this reason, the Office of Community Services is implementing quarterly reporting for LIHWAP. This will allow us to gather and share information in real time and to make frequent updates that demonstrate LIHWAP's achievements. One other thing I want to note is that throughout this webinar, we will refer to LIHWAP grantees as recipients. A recipient is defined as the LIHWAP lead agency for the state, territory, or tribe. Recipient is synonymous with grantee, a term that was previously used in OCS communications. Additionally, you will hear us refer to subrecipients. A subrecipient is an organization that receives a portion or subaward of the LIHWAP grant funding, usually through contract or grant from the LIHWAP lead agency. While the LIHWAP lead agency retains responsibility and accountability for all activities carried out under this grant award, the state, territory, or tribe may select subrecipient organizations to serve as local administering agencies who are subject to the terms and conditions of the award. Next slide, please. This is our LIHWAP Program Specialist Team. The Program Specialist serves as your federal LIHWAP point of contact. They will share information and guidance related to the program, review your reports, answer questions, and learn about LIHWAP implementation across grantee programs to promote information sharing and highlight promising practices. The LIHWAP Program Specialist Team includes Julie Gerzenza, who serves Regions 1 and 2, Frank Rojas, who works with Regions 2 and 8, Sarah Dalglesh, working with Regions 4 and 10, Carlos Torres, who works with Regions 5 and 10, Mitchell Nevada, working with Regions 6 and 7, and Rachel Hammond, who works with Region 9. You should be in contact and have heard from your LIHWAP program specialist by now. We encourage you to become familiar with them and to be comfortable sharing information, questions, concerns, and successes related to your program. Next slide, please. Okay, so today's learning objectives. By the end of this webinar, you should have an understanding of the LIHWAP reporting requirements, which occur on both a quarterly and annual basis, what to expect in terms of LIHWAP quarterly reporting. You'd have a better understanding of the various sections and questions included in the LIHWAP quarterly report form, and you'll also get an introduction to the LIHWAP annual reporting requirements. And with that, I will turn it over to Sarah Dalglesh, who is going to talk about LIHWAP reporting requirements.
Thanks, Christina. So now let's begin with an overview of LIHWAP reporting requirements. In order to ensure that all LIHWAP recipients get the training and technical support that they need, as LIHWAP is implemented throughout the country and that critical stakeholders have timely information on the status of LIHWAP efforts, OCS is implementing a two-stage reporting process. This process begins with quarterly reporting requirements. That's 4 reports per year. The LIHWAP Quarterly Performance and Management Report is a tool for HHS to learn about the implementation of LIHWAP, including successes, challenges, needs, and innovations in somewhat real time. For the initial quarterly reports, it is necessary to provide information on the status of program implementation during the first year of this new effort. It is not yet determined, but if quarterly reports continue in the second and third year of the program, they will focus on households served each quarter and qualitative LIHWAP implementation information. The quarterly reports will focus on services provided to households during the reporting period, including connections with water vendors, achievements, challenges, and training and technical assistance needs. Keep in mind that the data submitted on your quarterly data report will be checked for consistency against the type of LIHWAP assistance that you reported in your LIHWAP model plan, and with the data reported in each recipient's LIHWAP annual report. However, you will have the opportunity to explain any variances or changes in previous data and the reason for the variance. Annual reports will be due at the end of the first, second, and third reporting years. And the annual reports provide supplemental information on your program on an annual basis. Both the annual and quarterly reports provide comprehensive information about the new program. The LIHWAP reporting process is designed to provide critical information on the status of your program. The reports submitted by grant recipients will help to ensure that LIHWAP, an emergency and temporary program, is implemented effectively and efficiently, provide reliable and complete fiscal and household data for OCS analysis and reporting to Congress and the public, and respond to questions from Congress, the Department of Health and Human Services, the Office of Management and Budget, the White House, and other interested parties in a timely and accurate manner. Now that we have covered some of the basics, let's dig a little deeper into what to expect for LIHWAP quarterly reporting. The time period and anticipated due dates for quarterly reports in the first reporting year are provided on the slide. The LIHWAP Quarterly Performance and Management Report will be due 1 month after the end of each quarter. Quarters are based on the federal fiscal year. For the first fiscal year, 2022, which goes from October 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2022, the reporting periods are Quarter 1, implementation through December 31st, 2021, with the report due on January 31st, 2022. Quarter 2, January 1st through 2022 through March 31st, 2022, with the report due on April 29th, 2022. Quarter 3, which covers April 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2022, with the report due on January 29th, 2022. And Quarter 4, which covers July 1st, 2022 through September 30th, 2022, with the report due on October 31st, 2022. As you can see, the time between the end of the reporting period and the anticipated due dates is approximately 1 month. However, OCS encourages grantees to plan accordingly for the reporting periods and make sure anyone involved in the LIHWAP reporting process knows how to best gather information and communicate it internally in order to meet the reporting deadline. Before the first report is due, OCS will issue instructions for submission via an action transmittal. Be on the lookout for this action transmittal as we get closer to the first reporting due date in January 2022. So what does the quarterly report look like, and how and when will LIHWAP recipients submit reports? For LIHWAP, we have designed an Excel workbook entitled LIHWAP Quarterly Performance and Management Report, which was developed for states, territories, and tribes to report LIHWAP data for all 4 reporting quarters. Recipients are required to submit their quarterly data submissions using the Excel workbook. Each quarter, submit the entire Excel workbook, not just the Excel sheet with the current quarter. A little bit later in the webinar, we will go through the various sections of the Excel workbook report with you. The LIHWAP Quarterly Performance and Management Report is available on the LIHWAP website under the Dear Colleague Letter 2022-01 Report Forms Update FY 2022. Notably, LIHWAP recipients will submit their completed quarterly and annual LIHWAP reports via email. Submit the completed LIHWAP annual report with a copy to your program specialist to liwapreports@acs.hhs.gov. The quarterly report form requires LIHWAP recipients to report on a variety of information on the status of program implementation, such as total unduplicated households assisted and assistance provided by service type, such as restoration of services to households, prevention of disconnection of services to households, and reducing rates charged to households. And the quarterly report form also requires LIHWAP recipients to report on LIHWAP implementation information, such as the number of water vendors that recipients have entered into an agreement with, and any barriers to vendor agreement execution. Recipients are also asked to provide any notable accomplishments achieved during the reporting period. Recipients will also be able to discuss additional unmet water and wastewater needs in their service areas in their quarterly reports, and recipients will have an opportunity to highlight additional training and technical assistance needs and suggestions. The quarterly report form uses several terms that are helpful to become acquainted with. These terms have specific definitions, and we will review them here to help ensure that grantees have a better understanding. The first term is arrearage. For the purposes of LIHWAP, an arrearage refers to an unpaid past due bill for household drinking water and/or wastewater utility services. The second term is rate reduction. Rate reduction refers to a full or partial payment of a currently due bill charged to a household for drinking water or wastewater services. Both arrearage and rate reduction payments may include payments of standard reconnection fees, charges, and penalties. However, these fees should be standard fees consistent with the existing and ongoing business practices of the water utility, rather than a special fee charged to LIHWAP households. Recipients have discretion in determining whether these costs are included in the maximum benefit level or are in addition to the maximum benefit level. The next term is household. The unit for LIHWAP counting is the household, not the head of household or persons in the household. LIHWAP defines the term household as any individual or group of individuals who are living together as one economic unit for whom residential drinking water and or wastewater services are customarily purchased in common, or who make undesignated payments to those services in the form of rent. Household members are those individuals who comprise the household unit. The next term is unduplicated household counts. Recipients are required to report unduplicated counts of LIHWAP-assisted households for each type of LIHWAP assistance provided each quarter. Unduplicated counts mean that households are only counted once for each specific data variable. I will now hand it over to Mary Watts.
Thanks, Sarah. So far, we have done a high-level overview of the LIHWAP quarterly report, as well as some key definitions that will appear in the report. Let's take a closer look at the report and instructions for each of the report's 6 different sections. As we mentioned earlier, the LIHWAP report template is an Excel workbook. This Excel format is the same for both the quarterly and annual report. An example of how the report looks like is on the slide, and we will refer to these screenshots in the slides to come. The report is submitted via email, and the Excel workbook was designed to be cumulative, with separate worksheets for each quarter, quarters 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's look at the different sections of the LIHWAP quarterly report. The first portion of the report you will notice is called Recipient Information. In the Recipient Information section, LIHWAP recipients should include all of the information being requested, for example, the name, phone number, and email address for the individual who is filling out the quarterly data report, or the person who should be contacted if OCS has any questions or concerns during the report. Section 1 of the quarterly report asks recipients to report on the total households assisted. This question requires the recipient to report the total number of unduplicated households assisted across all service areas during the quarter. An assisted household is one that applied for and received LIHWAP assistance. Households that have applied for LIHWAP benefits but have not received one by the end of the quarter should be counted in the quarters that the household actually receives their benefits. An unduplicated count of households means that households are to be counted only once, regardless of the types of LIHWAP assistance received. For example, even if a household receives assistance with restoring their service and reducing the rate charges to them, for this particular question, the household would only be counted once. Quarters 2, 3, and 4 will include a section for total cumulative households assisted. The number will be automatically calculated based on the information the recipient provided in the prior quarterly reports. Section 2 of the quarterly report asks recipients to report on the assistance provided by service type. This section includes 3 questions that focus on the type of LIHWAP assistance provided to each household by service type. Each question is a 2-pronged question. For each type of LIHWAP assistance provided, recipients should report the number of households assisted by both the type of assistance provided and the service type. We will go over definitions of type of assistance and type of service in just a few moments. Given that households can have received multiple types of assistance, recipients are required to report the unduplicated counts of the number of households assisted by type of assistance and service received. Households that received multiple types of assistance should be included in the count of households for each relevant assistance type. For example, a household receiving assistance with restoring their water services and reducing the rate charged to them on their water bill is to be counted once under each applicable section. Continuing with Section 2 of the quarterly report, this section asks recipients to report the number of households assisted by the type of assistance provided. The 3 main types of assistance a household could receive are, number 1, restoration of services. So households that were disconnected that received assistance to have drinking water and/or wastewater services restored. Number 2, prevention of disconnection of services. Households that received assistance that prevented drinking and/or wastewater services from being disconnected. And lastly, number 3, reduction of rates charged. So households that received assistance to reduce the rates charged to them on their water bill to help them ensure affordable drinking and water or wastewater services. Section 2 also asks recipients to report the number of households assisted by the type of service. The 3 main types of service a household could receive are water and/or wastewater services, assistance with only water and/or wastewater services. So in these instances, water and wastewater services are itemized on the beneficiary's water bill. The majority of your households will receive this service. The second is multiple services. So assistance with both water, wastewater services, and other non-water services. In these instances, due to the inability to obtain an itemized list of charges on the water bill, households receive assistance with their entire bill, which could include non-water services, in order to restore service or prevent the disconnection of water services. This service should be provided in rare circumstances, as we hope recipients are working with water vendors to ensure that they are only paying for water and/or wastewater related services and fees. Lastly is other water services. Assistance with other water services as outlined in the recipient's grantee implementation plan, which may include limited water delivery services, specialized wastewater disposal services, or maybe an annual tax for the tribe for support services, such as a membership tax. Recipients providing assistance with other water services should include a list of these services under the section that states, if other services were paid for LIHWAP funds, please explain. Now let's get a better understanding how to accurately report unduplicated counts of households in Section 2, assistance provided by service type. In this example, we will cover 5 example household scenarios. We will refer to these 5 household scenarios as household A, B, C, D, and E. First, household A received a LIHWAP benefit that both restored the household's water services and reduced the rates charged on their next water bill. Household A receives a water and wastewater services from the same vendor and has an itemized list that clearly shows the bill was only for water or wastewater services. Household A is therefore listed in both sections of the report. Household B, a LIHWAP benefit that prevented the disconnection of their water and wastewater services, as the benefit paid for the household's water, wastewater, and other non-water related charges that was overdue. Household B receives all of their water services on one bill that has one charge for all water and trash services. Now we'll go to Household D. Household D received a benefit that both restored the household's wastewater service and reduced the rate charged on their wastewater bill. The household receives separate bills for water and wastewater services, and the cost of each service is clearly stated in the bills. And then we'll do Household E. Household E received a benefit that reduced a current bill for water delivery services because there is no other method to access safe drinking water. You may notice that we skipped Household C, and that's because Household C applied for a restoration of wastewater services benefit, but has not received it yet. Therefore, they should not be included in this section of the report during this quarter. So Section 3 of the LIHWAP Quarterly Report asks recipients to report on LIHWAP implementation information. This section includes 5 questions that focus on key aspects of implementation, including vendor and subrecipient agreements, the program start date, which is the date the state, territory, or tribe started accepting applications for LIHWAP benefits, and the service areas covered by LIHWAP. Please note that questions in the section of the quarterly report may change each quarter. So in the next few slides, we will go over the Section 3 questions that will appear in reporting quarters 1 and 2, as they are the most time sensitive. So question 1 in Section 3 asks, of the water vendors in your state, territory, or tribe, how many vendors have you entered into an agreement with? For this question, recipients should report on the total number of water service vendors that they have established an agreement with in their area. In reporting quarters 1 and 2, question 2 of Section 3 asks, if you have not entered into a vendor agreement with all vendors, please describe the barriers to execution below. So recipients should only answer this question if they have not entered into an agreement with all of the water and wastewater vendors in their service area. If this question applies to the recipient should describe any barriers they are experiencing with regards to entering into agreement with vendors. In reporting quarters 1 and 2, question 3 of Section 3 asks, have you begun to accept applications for LIHWAP? Recipients should answer yes or no to this question. If the recipient answers yes to this question, they should include the date the recipient or one of their subrecipients started accepting applications from households. If the recipient answers no to this question, they should include an estimated start date for accepting applications. In reporting quarters 1 and 2, question 4 of Section 3 asks, if you have not begun to accept applications for LIHWAP, please explain why below. So therefore, recipients should only answer this question if they have not begun to accept applications for LIHWAP in that quarter. If this question applies to the recipient should explain why they have not started accepting applications. In reporting quarters 1 and 2, question 5 of Section 3 asks, if you have started accepting applications, have all areas of your state, territory, or tribe begun implementation? If no, please briefly explain what your approach or plan for getting to full implementation, including which areas have not begun accepting applications and why. If the recipient has started accepting applications, the recipient should report if all areas of each state, territory, or tribe have begun implementation. If all areas have not begun implementation, for example, the entire state, territory, or tribe, explain the approach the recipient will use to reach 100% implementation. If the recipient does not expect to reach 100% implementation at this time, the recipient explains why 100% of the implementation is currently not feasible. There is also 6 questions that recipients should respond to if applicable, and it asks, have you executed agreements with all of your subrecipients? If no, please explain. If applicable, so that would be if the recipient is not administering the entire LIHWAP program themselves. The recipient should report if the recipient has executed agreements with all necessary subrecipients. That would include community action agencies, local, city, or county governments, or other nonprofit organizations you might be working with. If the recipient has not executed agreements with all subrecipients, the recipient should provide an explanation why they have not executed all of the agreements. As we mentioned earlier in Section 3, will not change reporting. As we mentioned earlier, questions in Section 3 will change reporting for quarters 3, which will begin April 1st, 2022. In quarter 3, the questions asked in this section is reduced to only 3. These questions require the recipient to identify if there are any changes to the vendor and subrecipient agreements or service areas covered. For quarter 3, you will be asked, are there any changes in your agreements with water vendors from the previous quarters? Please explain any changes below. Report if there are any changes to the number of water service vendors reported in quarter 2 with which the recipient has entered an established agreement. If there are no changes to the report, enter not applicable for this response. Are there any changes to which portions of your service area are accepting applications and implementing LIHWAP from quarter 2? If so, please explain the changes. If not at 100% of implementation, please briefly explain your approach plan for getting to full implementation, including which areas have not begun accepting applications and why. Recipients should report if there are any changes to the service areas in their state, territory, or tribe that are accepting application for LIHWAP benefits. For instance, has another region or subrecipient started accepting applications during the quarter that is not being reported on? If there are no changes to report, enter not applicable for the response. If applicable, have you executed agreements with all of your subgrantees or subrecipients? If no, please explain. And if applicable, the recipient should report if the recipient has executed agreements with all necessary subrecipients. If the recipient has not executed agreements with all the subrecipients, the recipient should provide an explanation explaining why they have not executed all agreements. And in quarter 4, which begins on July 1st, 2022, the 3 questions you'll respond to will change slightly again. So recipients will be asked, are there any changes in your agreements with water vendors from the previous quarter? So recipients should report if there are any changes to the number of water service vendors reported in quarter 3 in which the recipient had an established agreement. If there are no changes to report, you can enter not applicable for the response. The next question is, are you still accepting LIHWAP applications? The recipient should report if they or any of their subrecipients are still accepting LIHWAP applications at that time. And then if you are still accepting applications, are there any changes to which portions of your service areas are accepting applications and implementing LIHWAP from quarter 3? If yes, please explain the changes. If the recipient is still accepting applications, the recipient should report on any changes to the information provided in quarter 3. This includes the areas of the state, territory, or tribe that has begun implementation or stopped accepting LIHWAP applications, including the reason why they stopped accepting applications. All changes should be explained using the open text field provided for the response. Moving to Section 4 of the LIHWAP Quarterly Report, which is Performance Management. In Section 4, Recipients are required to provide a brief narrative description for each of the 4 questions included in this section. In the next few slides, we will review these questions and how recipients will need to respond. Additionally, there is a 5th question posed in quarter 4. So question 1 of section 4 asks, describe up to 3 notable accomplishments achieved by LIHWAP implementation during the reporting period. Please include a participant success story if applicable. Recipients should report on accomplishments that they believe are notable, including accomplishments related to implementation, partnerships, innovations, policy procedures, outreach, and/or outcomes. Question 2 of section 4 asks, describe any challenges with LIHWAP implementation during the reporting period. Recipients should describe any challenges that they have experienced with LIHWAP implementation and/or administration of the program. So next, section 3 of section 4 asks, are there any additional unmet water and wastewater needs in your service area? If yes, please describe. Recipients should describe any unmet needs they are aware of. Unmet needs may include needs related to administering LIHWAP or the needs of the households themselves. Question 4 of section 4 asks, do you have any training and/or technical assistance needs that you would like the Office of Community Services to offer support for? Recipients are encouraged to highlight any additional training and technical assistance they may need to successfully administer LIHWAP at the state and/or local level. Now there's question 5 of section 4 is an additional question only in quarter 4, and that states, please list and describe up to 3 lessons learned during the first year of LIHWAP implementation. Recipients are encouraged to add information about their lessons learned, planning for, implementing, and administering LIHWAP. Sections 5 and 6 round out the quarterly report. In section 5 is the remarks section. If the recipient has concerns about the reliability or the validity of the data they have provided in that quarterly report, they should provide an explanation in these comments in section 5. Section 6 is the certification section. This is where the authorizing official that is inputting the data in the LIHWAP quarterly performance and management report certifies that the information provided is true, complete, and accurate to the best of their knowledge. The authorizing official is required to provide their name, job title, and electronic or written signature. The report will be considered incomplete and not accepted unless this information is included. Recipients should submit their quarterly LIHWAP performance and management report to the LIHWAP program specialist and the LIHWAP reporting email by the due date outlined in the instructions. Thank you. Next, we'll have Mitch Navetta, and he will briefly describe the annual report.
Thank you, Mary. Now that we have gone through the LIHWAP quarterly report, its various sections, and its questions, let's take a brief look at the LIHWAP annual report. While we will not go into great detail about the LIHWAP annual report today, LIHWAP recipients are encouraged to become familiar with the information that will need to be monitored and the data to be collected over the course of this first year of implementation. OCS will be providing additional technical assistance and webinars regarding the LIHWAP annual report this fiscal year, so stay tuned for more information. Like the LIHWAP quarterly report, an Excel workbook entitled The LIHWAP Annual Report has been developed for states, territories, and tribes to report LIHWAP data for each reporting year. Recipients are required to submit their annual data submissions using the Excel workbook. Also, like the quarterly reports, the annual report will be submitted via email. Additionally, while we won't go into all of the details today, the LIHWAP annual reporting instructions, which are listed as a resource on the LIHWAP website, list key definitions of terms that you should become familiar with prior to reporting. Finally, also like the quarterly report, the annual report will ask you to report on the 3 main types of assistance and 3 main types of services that we reviewed earlier in this webinar. The reporting period and due dates for the LIHWAP annual report are January 31st of the following year. So, for fiscal year 2022, the reporting period will cover implementation, meaning when you started your award, through September 30th, 2022. The first LIHWAP annual report is due on January 31st, 2023. For fiscal year 2023, the reporting period covers federal fiscal year 2023, or October 1st, 2022, through September 30th, 2023. That report is due on January 31st, 2024. Household data are for the fiscal year reporting period, for example, October 1st through September 30th. Recipients may operate their programs on a different program year, for example, starting January 1st or July 1st. However, complete household data still need to be reported for the fiscal year reporting period. As a reminder, data submitted in the LIHWAP annual report will be checked for consistency against the type of LIHWAP assistance that recipients report in their LIHWAP model plan for fiscal year 2022, and with the data reported in each recipient's LIHWAP quarterly performance and management report. Let's look at the framework for the annual report. The LIHWAP annual report is broken down into 3 modules within the same Excel workbook. Each module then contains various sections recipients must report on. The first module asks recipients to report on the use of funds. For this section, we ask that recipients report amount for funds obligated, so recipients will need to obtain expenditure data, which is not collected on the quarterly report. The second module is a household report asking recipients to report on the number of LIHWAP households served by LIHWAP in total and by various data categories, including by the type of assistance received, poverty level, vulnerable population status, and household demographic information, for example, race, ethnicity, and gender. Demographic data is included in this section, which is not collected on the quarterly report. Module 3 requires recipients to report on performance measures, specifically assisted household data. Here, recipients will be asked to report on the household water burden before and after LIHWAP payment assistance. As a reminder, water burden refers to the amount due as a percentage of income for a specific period. For example, the monthly household income divided by the monthly water bill. So, we realized that was a lot of information, and that concludes the portion of this webinar on the LIHWAP quarterly and annual reporting. Before we move on to the question and answer session, let's take a few moments to review a few items. In addition, LIHWAP recipients have a variety of LIHWAP reporting resources that they should review and become better acquainted with. This includes the Dear Colleague Letter DCL-2022-01, Report Forms Update Fiscal Year 2022, which includes LIHWAP quarterly and annual report instructions and forms. To help LIHWAP recipients with the implementation of their programs and to assist around issues of reporting, OCS will also host 8 office hours to support state, territory, and tribal LIHWAP grant recipients as they begin implementation and collect the necessary data for reporting requirements. Each session will be limited to 12 agencies at a time to maximize assistance on a first-come, first-served basis. We are asking grant recipients to pre-register and include any potential questions you would like to be addressed by OCS staff in the registration form. This does not preclude grant recipients from asking additional questions during the session. Instead, it will allow us to cover frequently asked questions early on in the session and/or through written guidance, so we can maximize the time we have during each office hour. The 6 sessions on this slide are available for all state, tribe, or territory LIHWAP recipients. 2 additional office hours have been designated specifically for tribes. However, tribal grantees can also sign up for any of the office hour sessions mentioned on the previous slide. This concludes the recorded portion of the training. We will now open it up for questions and answers if you are joining us live. If not, please follow up with your program specialist with any individual questions you may have or join our office hours. Thank you.